Right, homework 2, standard and slope-intercept form. So first set we are writing in standard form. So just as a reminder, standard form is ax plus by equals c. So that's the form we're trying to get it into. Remember, there's a few rules along with that. This value of a right here has to be a positive number. A, b, and c have to have a GCF that is no greater than 1, meaning they can't all be even or they can't all be divisible by 5 or something like that. And they all have to be integers, no decimals, no fractions. Okay, so we're going to make sure that we can get all those rules, and we're going to start with number 1. So first thing I always recommend is just getting all the terms in this order, the a and the y on the left, and then just the constant on the right-hand side. So with this, we're going to do that by subtracting 6x from both sides. So when I subtract 6x from the left-hand side, it'll be negative and it'll join the y that's already there. And when I subtract 6x from the right, it'll cancel and I'll just have the negative 4 left behind. So we start with that. Then we go through our rules. So the first rule I mentioned is that a has to be a positive value. As of right now, a is not a positive value. So what you do, if it is negative, you just divide everything through by a -1. Okay, so we're going to take everything here, every single term, and just divide it through by a -1. So this now comes out as a positive, this one comes out as a negative, and also the one on the right-hand side turned into a positive. So that's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is you can't have a GCF other than 1. So if we look at our values, A is 6, B is technically a -1, and C is 4. No GCF there. There's nothing that they all have in common that you need to divide out, so that rule is good. And our last rule is that they all have to be integers, meaning no decimals, no fractions with a denominator other than 1. So these are all integers. These are positive whole numbers, and then this is a negative whole number. So this is in standard form, and it is good to go. All right, next set of problems, we'll do number 5. So write each equation in slope-intercept form and then graph the line. So again, just to get this right in front of you here so we know what slope-intercept form is, then we're going to practice graphing. So this one we've got y equals mx plus b. This is actually already in standard form. In slope-intercept form. It is ready to go. So just like to write down what our slope is and what our y-intercept is. So remember, the m is your slope, the b is your y-intercept. So we start with this point, 0, 4 would be our y-intercept, and then we can use the slope to plot additional points from there. So 0, 4, we go up the y-axis 4 units, and we're going to plot our starting point right there. So one thing that people mix up is they tend to accidentally plot this point on the x-axis rather than the y-axis. This value is always going to go on the y-axis. There's also a chance that you might not see one, which would make it 0. Okay, so then the next value is our slope, is -5/6. And remember, we talked about slope as being rise over run. So a rise is an up or down, and then a run is a left or right. So our rise is -5, which means we're actually going to go down rather than technically rising. So we're going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're going to go to the right 6 units. So run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we'll leave another point right there. All right, so really 2 points is totally fine to plot a line. Another thing to keep in mind, instead of going down and to the right, you could completely reverse that and you could go up and to the lefts. So you could plot a 3rd point if you wanted to, but 2 points is really all you need to give yourself an accurate line. It would look like that. All right, so that is our second set. Our third set of problems, we are talking about parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So what you need to know for those ones to answer that question is what the slopes are. In order to get the slopes, it'd be a good idea to put these back into y equals mx plus b if they're not already. All right, so this one is not quite. We want the y to be by itself on the left-hand side of the equation. So I'm going to do that by subtracting x from both sides. So if I subtract x, the y will be by itself. And if I subtract x from the right, you'll have a -x joining our 8. So that is in slope-intercept form. And the second one is actually already in slope-intercept form. So I just want to write it next to it here. So this one, this slope, the number in front of the x, which is a -1. And for our second one, again, the slope is in front of the x, which is also a -1. So in this scenario with number 11, our slopes match. And if our slopes are the exact same number, same sign, same value, then we would say that our lines are parallel. Okay, in order to be perpendicular, they would have to have opposite reciprocal slopes, and then neither would just mean it's neither of those categories. They're not the exact same or opposite reciprocals. Last category, finding x and y intercepts and then graphing. So x and y intercepts, to find an x-intercept, what you do is you plug in 0 for y, and to find y-intercepts, you plug in 0 for x. So it's kind of like the opposite of what you think you might do. Because if you're somewhere, for instance, on the x-axis, all of these points have a y value of 0. And if you're somewhere on the y-axis, all of these points have an x value of 0. All right, so starting with our x-intercepts, we're going to plug in 0 for y, so the y on the left gets replaced with a 0, and then we're going to end up solving that for x. So what we'd do first is inverse operation. We'd add this 2 to both sides, so 0 plus 2, and then when I add the 2 to the right, it's gone. And then inverse operation again would be to divide by the 2 that's in front of this x. So divide both sides by 2, 2 divided by 2 is 1, 2x divided by 2 is x. So that's the x-intercept. You want to make sure that you're in the habit of writing those x-intercepts as ordered pairs, so you know that they're points to plot rather than a line. All right, so we know that the x-coordinate is 1, and we knew from the start that the y-coordinate of that point would be 0. So that's one point that we can plot. So 1, 0 would be the point right there. Second point is going to be our y-intercept. So for our y-intercept, you plug in 0 for x this time. So we have y equals, and then on the right-hand side, we're going to replace that x with 0, and then we'll simplify that up. So if I clean up the right-hand side, 2 times 0 is 0, minus 2 would come out as a negative 2. And again, you want to write it as an ordered pair. So we plugged in 0 for x, and what we ended up with was a negative 2 for y. The reason I have you guys, remember, write out these ordered pairs, a lot of times people accidentally combine this x value with this y value as one ordered pair, and that is not the way to do it. You should have 2 separate ordered pairs, unless, of course, you get the origin. Okay, and that's a special scenario right there. All right, so this one, 0, negative 2 would be this point on the line right there. And just like we talked about on the previous page, 2 points is plenty to draw a line. So you just connect the dots and it looks like that.